Catiline's first attempts at revolution. Amid the corruption of the great city, Catiline could easily surround himself as with a bodyguard with gangs of profligates and criminals, debauchees, adulterers, and gamblers who had squandered their inheritances in gaming dens, pothouses, and brothels. Anyone who had bankrupted himself to buy impunity for his infamous or criminal acts. Men convicted anywhere of murder or sacrilege or living in fear of conviction. Cutthroats and perjurers, too, who made a trade of bearing false witness or shedding the blood of fellow citizens. In short, all who were in disgrace or afflicted by poverty or consciousness of guilt were Catiline's intimate associates. And if anyone as yet innocent happened to become friendly with him, the temptations to which daily intercourse with Catiline exposed him soon made him as evil a ruffian as the rest. It was above all the young whose intimacy he sought. Their minds, being still impressionable and changeable, were easily ensnared. In order to gratify the youthful desires of each, he procured mistresses for some, bought dogs and horses for others, and spared neither his purse nor his honor to put them under obligations and make them his faithful followers. Some I know have believed that the young men who resorted to Catiline's house practiced unnatural lewdness. But this rumor was credited rather because the rest of their conduct made it seem a likely inference than because anyone knew it to be so. For one thing, Catiline had in his early days engaged in many scandalous intrigues, one with a maiden of noble birth, another with a priestess of Vesta, not to mention similar offenses against law and morality. He ended by falling in love with Aurelia or Astilla, a woman in whom no respectable man ever found anything to praise except her beauty, and it is generally accepted as a fact that when she hesitated to marry him because she was afraid of his grown-up son by a previous marriage, he murdered his son in order to clear the house of an impediment to this unhallowed union. Indeed, I think it was principally this deed that determined him to postpone his criminal attempt no longer. His unclean mind, hating God and fellow man alike, could find rest neither waking nor sleeping. So cruelly did remorse torture his frenzied soul. His complexion was pallid, his eyes hideous, his gait now hurried and now slow. Face and expression plainly marked him as a man distraught. To the youths he had entrapped in the way I have described, he taught many kinds of wickedness. From their ranks he would provide men to commit perjury or to affix their seals to a forged document. He thought nothing of damaging their credit and their fortunes, or of exposing them to peril. Then, having ruined their reputations and stripped them of all sense of shame, he made bigger demands upon them. Even if he had no immediate motive for wrongdoing, he caused inoffensive persons to be attacked or killed with as much malevolence as if they had been guilty of injuring him. Rather than allow his pupils to lose their skill or nerve through lack of practice, he would have them commit needless outrages. With such friends and allies to rely on, with the whole empire bankrupt and most of Sulla's veterans ruined by extravagant living, looking back regretfully to the loot which past victories had brought them, and longing for civil war, Catiline planned a revolution. There were no troops in Italy, and Pompey was fighting in far distant lands. Catiline himself had high hopes of being elected consul. The Senate suspected nothing, and everything seemed quiet and secure, which gave him just the opportunity he wanted. About the beginning of June, therefore, in the consulship of Lucius Caesar and Gaius Figulus, he began by making overtures to individuals, encouraging some, sounding others, and pointing out to them his own resources, the unprepared condition of the state, and the attractive prizes that a conspiracy offered. When he was satisfied with the results of his inquiries, he convened a general meeting of the neediest and most reckless of his acquaintance. It was attended by the senators Publius Lentulus Sura, Publius Autronius, Lucius Cassius Longinus, Gaius Carthagus, Publius and Servius Sulla, the sons of Servius Sulla, Lucius Varuncutius, Quintus Annius, Marcus Porcius Lasa, Lucius Bestia, and Quintus Curius. By Marcus Fulvius Nobilior, Lucius Statilius, Publius Gabinius Capito, and Gaius Cornelius, members of the equestrian order, and by many members of the local nobility from Italian colonies and municipalities. There were also a number of men of high standing who took a mere secret part in the movement, influenced more by the hope of gaining power than by poverty or any other necessity. Indeed, the Roman youth in general, especially those of high rank, looked with favor on Catiline's enterprise. Although they had the means, without stirring a finger, to live in splendor, or if they so desired, in luxurious ease, they preferred a chance to a certainty and chose war instead of peace. There were some who believed at the time that Marcus Licinius Crassus also was aware of the design. His hated rival Pompey was at the head of a great army, and Crassus, it was thought, would have been glad to see Pompey's supremacy threatened by the rise of another powerful man, whoever he might be, fully confident that if the conspirators succeeded, he would readily be accepted as their leader. First, however, I must mention a similar plot which Catiline and a few others had previously formed against the state. I will give as accurate an account of it as I can. In the consulship of Lucius Tullius and Manius Lepidus, the consuls-elect, Publius Autrolus and Publius Sulla, had been prosecuted and punished under the laws against electoral corruption. Shortly afterwards, Catiline was prevented from standing for one of the vacant consulships because he was on trial for extortion, and so could not enter his name within the specified number of days. About the same time, a needy young noble called Gnaeus Piso, a faction fighter of reckless daring, was being goaded into a revolutionary intrigue by his poverty and unprincipled character. To this man, Catiline and Autronius revealed their plans in the first week of December. They were plotting to assassinate the new consuls Lucius Cotta and Lucius Torquatus in the capital on the 1st of January, to seize the consular fasces for themselves, and to send Piso with an army to occupy the two Spanish provinces. Because their murderous intent was discovered, they postponed its execution till the 5th of February, and this time they planned to destroy most of the senators as well as the consuls. Had not Catiline been in too great a hurry to give the signal to his accomplices in front of the Senate House, that day would have seen the commission of the most heinous crime in the annals of Rome. As it was, the armed conspirators had not yet mustered in force, so the plan failed. Piso was afterwards sent as quaestor with praetorian powers to eastern Spain. His appointment was strongly urged by Crassus, because he knew to be a bitter enemy of Pompey. At the same time, the Senate was quite willing to assign him the province, since they were glad to remove such an unprincipled character to a distance from Rome. Moreover, many good citizens thought he would be a protection against the already formidable power of Pompey. Piso was killed in the course of a journey through his province by some Spanish horsemen who form part of his army. Some say that the natives could not tolerate the injustice, arrogance, and cruelty of his conduct as governor. Others maintain that the horsemen were old and devoted retainers of Pompey and were set on by him to attack Piso. They point out that the Spaniards never committed any other such crime and had patiently endured much oppression. I shall leave this point open and shall say no more about this earlier conspiracy. When Catiline had assembled the men whom I mentioned, although he had often had long conferences with each of them individually, he thought it advisable to address an exhortation to the whole company. Accordingly, he made them withdraw into a remote part of the house, and after excluding all witnesses, spoke to the following effect: "Were I not assured of your courage and loyalty, I could not use this favorable opportunity that fortune has vouchsafed me. However high our hopes, however easy it might seem for us to seize power, all would have been in vain, for with only cowards or triflers to rely on, I, for one, would not throw away a certainty to grasp at a hazardous chance. It is because I have found you brave and faithful to me on many important occasions that I venture to embark on a great and noble enterprise. Also, because I have observed that what seems good or bad to me seems so to you. For identity of likes and dislikes is the one solid foundation of friendship. The projects which I have been turning over in my mind have already been explained to each of you separately. But for my own part, every passing day kindles my enthusiasm more and more, when I think what will be our lot unless we ourselves assert our claim to liberty. Ever since the state came under the jurisdiction and control of a powerful oligarchy, it is always they who receive tribute from foreign kings and princes and rake in taxes from every people and tribe. The rest of us, however energetic and virtuous we may be, whether our birth be noble or base, are but a crowd of nobodies without influence or authority, subservient to men who in a soundly governed state would stand in awe of us. Thus all influence, power, office, and wealth are in their hands, or where they choose to bestow them. All they leave for us is danger, defeat, prosecutions, and poverty. How long, brave comrades, will you endure it? Is it not better to die courageously and have done with it, than to drag out lives of misery and dishonor as the playthings of other men's insolence, until we lose them ignominiously in the end? But in truth, I call on gods and men to witness it. Victory is within our grasp. We have the strength of youth and we have stout hearts, whereas our opponents are enfeebled by age and soft living. We have but to make a start. The rest will follow easily. Can anyone who has the spirit of a man endure that they should have a superfluity of riches to waste in building out into the sea and leveling mountains, while we lack means to buy necessities? They have 2, 3, or 4 houses joined together, when we have not a home to call our own. Though they buy pictures, statues, and vessels of chased metal, though they pull down new houses to build others, laying waste their wealth and making inroads upon it in every imaginable way, yet all their extravagance cannot exhaust it. For us there is destitution at home and debts everywhere else, misery now, and a still worse future to look forward to. We have nothing left, in fact, save the breath we draw in our wretchedness. Awake, then, Here, here before your eyes is the liberty that you have often yearned for, and with all affluence, honor, and glory, all of which fortune offers as the prizes of victory. Consider your situation and your opportunity, the peril and want that beset you, and the rich spoils that may be won in war. These plead more strongly than any words of mine. Use me as your commander, or as a soldier in the ranks. My heart and my hands shall be at your service. These are the objects I hope to help you achieve when I am your consul, unless indeed I deceive myself, and you are content to be slaves instead of masters." This speech was addressed to men who were afflicted with manifold misfortunes and had nothing good to enjoy or to hope for, and to them the disturbance of the peace was in itself a highly attractive proposition. Most of them, however, asked Catiline to explain on what lines he intended to conduct the war, what were the prizes they would be fighting for, and what help they could count on or might hope to obtain from various quarters. Thereupon Catiline promised them the cancellation of debts and a proscription of the rich, magistracies and priesthoods, opportunities of plunder, and all the other desirable things with which war satisfies the greed of victors. In eastern Spain, he added, was Piso, in Mauritania, Publius Sitius of Nocera, at the head of an army, both of them accomplices in the plot. Moreover, one of the consular candidates was Gaius Antonius, whom he hoped to have as his colleague in that office. And since Antonius, besides being his intimate friend, was in desperate straits, he could count on his cooperation, when as consul he began to execute his plans. Then he proceeded to heap abuse on all honest citizens, and praising each of his adherents by name, reminded them either of their needy condition or of their ambitions, of the prosecutions that threatened them, or the disgrace they had incurred, of Sulla's victory, and the spoil with which it had enriched them. All were now thoroughly roused, whereupon, after an urgent appeal for their help at the forthcoming election, he dismissed the meeting. There was a rumor current at the time that when Catiline, on the conclusion of his speech, called on the associates of his plot to swear an oath, he passed round bowls of human blood mixed with wine, and when all had tasted of it, after invoking a curse upon themselves if they broke faith, in accordance with the usual practice at such solemn ceremonies, he revealed the details of his scheme. This he is said to have done in order that the consciousness of having jointly participated in such an abomination might make them more loyal to one another. Others, however, thought that this story, like many others, was invented by people who believed that the odium which afterwards arose against Cicero could be lessened by imputing hideous crimes to those whom he had punished. For my part, I think such a grave charge needs better proof than is forthcoming. Among the conspirators was one Quintus Curius, a man of good birth, but sunk over head and ears in infamy and crime, whom the censors had expelled from the Senate for immoral conduct. As unreliable as he was reckless, he could neither hold his tongue about what he heard, nor even keep dark his own misdeeds, being utterly regardless of what he said or did. A woman of good family named Fulvia had long been his mistress, and when he found himself less in favor with her, because lack of means compelled him to be less lavish with his presents, he suddenly began to talk big and to promise her the earth, the next moment threatening to stab her unless she complied with his demands. This high and mighty tone was so different from his normal manner that Fulvia insisted on an explanation, and, on learning the cause of his arrogant behavior, she decided that such a serious danger to the state must not be concealed. Without mentioning the name of her informant, she told a number of persons the various facts that she had ascertained about Catiline's plot. It was this information, more than anything else, that made people eager to entrust the consulship to Marcus Tullius Cicero. Previously, most of the aristocracy were seething with jealousy, and thought it almost a defilement of the consulship for an outsider, however outstanding his merits, to be elected to it. But when danger threatened, jealousy and pride had to take a back seat. Accordingly, when the poll took place, Cicero and Gaius Antonius were returned as consuls, which at the time was a bad blow to the conspirators. Yet Catiline's frenzy showed no sign of abating. Every day he enlarged his plans, establishing depots of arms at convenient spots throughout Italy, raising money on his own or his friends' credit, and sending it to Fiesole, to a man called Manlius, who later on was the first to open hostilities. About this time, Catiline is said to have gained many adherents of every condition, including a number of women, who in their earlier days had lived extravagantly on money that they obtained by prostituting themselves, and then, when advancing age reduced their incomes without changing their luxurious tastes, had run headlong into debt. These women, he thought, would do good service by acting as agitators among the city slaves, and organizing acts of incendiarism. Their husbands, too, could be either induced to join his cause or murdered. Among their number was Sempronia, a woman who had committed many crimes that showed her to have the reckless daring of a man. Fortune had favored her abundantly, not only with birth and beauty, but with a good husband and children. Well educated in Greek and Latin literature, she had greater skill in lyre playing and dancing than there is any need for a respectable woman to acquire, besides many other accomplishments, such as minister to dissipation. There was nothing that she set a smaller value on than seemliness and chastity, and she was as careless of her reputation as she was of her money. Her passions were so ardent that she more often made advances to men than they did to her. Many times already she had broken a solemn promise, repudiated a debt by perjury, and been an accessory to murder. At once self-indulgent and impecunious, she had gone headlong from bad to worse. Yet her abilities were not to be despised. She could write poetry, crack a joke, and converse at will with decorum, tender feeling, or wantonness. She was in fact a woman of ready wit and considerable charm.